哎呀妈，这回完了！哎呀妈呀，快点打水，还在下呀！哎呀妈！
当初买车的时候说让我交车团使用，所以我还
Oh my god! Why has the sky gone completely dark? It's not late evening, it's noon! In late July 2026, on the streets of Harbin, Heilongjiang, countless citizens looked up at the sky and gasped in disbelief. Within just a few minutes, rolling black clouds resembling hundreds of meters high dark tidal waves swept over the entire city with overwhelming force. What was once a bright day instantly turned into a pitch-black night where you couldn't see your hand in front of your face. Immediately after, torrential rain poured down like a collapsing waterfall. The entire city seemed as if it had been plunged straight underwater. One district after another Songbei, Zhangfeng, Kunli reported severe flooding and total gridlock. Streets transformed into raging rivers, subway entrances turned into cascading waterfalls, and countless cars floated in the water like lonely drifting boats. A resident who had just scrambled out of a subway station, soaked to the bone and still shaken, recalled, "Everything was fine before I stepped out. But when I came up from the subway, the cars were gone, and the roads were gone. This isn't driving anymore, this is literally navigating a boat." Yet, this jaw-dropping scene of dark clouds engulfing the city was merely the most minor snapshot of a broader crisis of extreme weather sweeping across vast stretches of China. What drives local residents in the Northeast into even deeper despair than a sudden downpour is the massive flood discharge that has dragged on for 9 straight days. As one of the most critical water conservancy projects in northeastern China, the Jilin Fengmen Dam has maintained an extraordinarily large-scale discharge for 9 consecutive days since mid-July. Astronomical volumes of water are being blasted into downstream river channels at terrifying speeds of thousands of cubic meters per second. Official announcements state that the number of rivers above warning levels has dropped significantly to 18, and water conditions are gradually stabilizing. But behind these written lines, downstream residents are bearing silent, catastrophic destruction. Tens of thousands of acres of fertile farmland lie submerged under roaring yellow torrents, as crops on the verge of harvest rot completely in the mud. Livestock and poultry farms have been wiped clean by the floodwaters, wiping away decades of life savings in a matter of seconds. Numerous villages have lost power and water, with roads completely severed, reducing them to isolated islands cut off from the outside world. Looking at his inundated home, a local farmer sighed helplessly. The official news claims the water level has dropped. But that's just the reservoir's metric dropping. Has the flood in our fields receded? Has anyone ever sat down to calculate our real losses? Before the previous floodwaters could fully recede, Heilongjiang officials issued yet another orange warning for flash floods. Water levels along the Songhua and Mudin rivers surged violently once again, with both upstream and downstream areas facing critical alerts. The irreconcilable conflict between reservoir flood prevention and downstream survival is being pushed to the absolute brink. While the Northeast was engulfed in deep crisis, East and Central China entered disaster mode almost simultaneously. In Hefei, Anhui, the sky suddenly turned pitch black in the middle of the afternoon. Violent gales ripped through the city, reaching peak wind speeds of force 11 comparable to a severe typhoon landing. Decades-old trees along the streets were uprooted, and massive billboards were torn into shreds and slammed onto the pavement. Commuters during rush hour struggled blindly through the storm, in scenes resembling an apocalyptic disaster movie. In Zhengzhou, Henan, and Zhangyang, Hubei, lightning flashed incessantly amidst churning dark clouds, as terrifying thunderstorm glare illuminated the night sky like an end-of-days scenario. In Shijiazhuang, Hebei, heavy rainfall caused severe waterlogging in multiple urban areas. In low-lying stretches, floodwaters rose past an adult's knees. Cars were forced to plow through flooded streets like makeshift boats, creating endless queues of stalled vehicles and bringing urban traffic to a complete standstill. From the dark clouds engulfing Harbin and the 9-day flood discharge in Jilin, to the force 11 gales in Anhui and urban waterlogging in Hebei within a short span of time, over a dozen provinces across China were caught in the crossfire of extreme weather. Whenever torrential rain strikes and cities drown, people inevitably ask the exact same question. Why, in an era of such advanced technology, do our cities remain so fragile? A single downpour can paralyze a provincial capital in just dozens of minutes. A few days of heavy rain can force countless downstream villages to become scapegoats, paying the price for a reservoir's flood discharge. We cannot deny that global climate change is bringing increasingly frequent extreme weather. However, what truly determines the scale of a disaster's aftermath is rarely the rainfall itself, it is whether a city is truly prepared, and whether a system genuinely places the lives and property of its citizens above all else. Drainage systems long left in disrepair, low-quality tofu drag municipal engineering, reservoir management that stores water to generate power during droughts, but frantically discharges during floods, and the knee-jerk habit of locking down information and censoring discussions immediately after a crisis erupts. When water resource departments trumpet dropping water levels as a major flood-fighting success, tens of thousands of flooded farmers downstream find themselves with nowhere to turn for help. When officials issue grand directives in front of news cameras, local early warning and evacuation mechanisms remain shockingly sluggish. Every time the floodwaters recede, what emerges from the mud is not just battered, ruined homes, but the fully exposed flaws of urban drainage, failed flood warnings, and a systemic collapse in emergency management. When disaster strikes, the true test is never the public's capacity to endure suffering, but the leadership's willingness to take accountability. If after every natural calamity, all that follows are grand propaganda narratives and endless self-congratulatory celebrations without genuine reflection or accountability, then when the next storm arrives, the tragedy will simply repeat itself. Extreme weather may be unavoidable, but innocent citizens should never have to pay the ultimate price for human negligence.
兄弟们啊，广西南宁横县银表镇发生水灾，看到没有？7个水库同时放水。 小车都被淹了，小车都被淹了，谁受得了啊？7个水库同时放水，谁受得了？看到没有？水位啊，到这里来，到这里来，比我还高，都是被水淹过的，不知道水库领导怎么解决？ 一片狼藉，看到了没有？水位都是这一路，啊，一片狼藉，水位到这里啊，现在水已经慢慢的下降了。 水库的领导啊，不抓紧时间放水，7个水库同时放水，谁受得了啊？小车啊，小车被淹了，怎么解决嘛？损失惨重啊！看到没有？那边有个小车都飞下去了。 请问怎么解决？损失惨重啊！